My fiancée moved my mom's urn before our engagement brunch, said it clashed with the decor. Her family laughed, so I cancelled everything without a word. Subscribe so you don't miss what's next. On our third date, Lydia saw my mother's photo on the shelf and asked if she'd been a maid. I laughed, thinking it was sarcasm. She smiled, said nothing. Later, she told me my mom had working-class charm. I should have noticed the edge in her tone. Patricia Grant raised 3 kids alone while working nights. I'd told Lydia that. Her comment stuck, but I let it slide. Thinking love was enough. Months later, Lydia offered to redecorate my apartment. I agreed until she boxed up my mother's crocheted blanket, calling it dated. When I pushed back, she said, "Your mom wouldn't care, would she?" That night, I unfolded the blanket. Stared at each stitch. Patricia made it the year she beat cancer. Lydia knew that. Charlotte warned me Lydia didn't value sentiment, but I kept pretending it was harmless taste, not deep disrespect. At a family dinner, Jack raised his glass to new beginnings without old baggage. He looked at the urn. Donna smirked. Lydia didn't flinch. I glanced at my father, who pressed his lips together. Ryan shifted uncomfortably but stayed silent. Charlotte excused herself. The air went still. No one defended Mom, not even me. That night, I replayed every word. Every silence. I wondered, had they been mocking her memory all along? Donna once joked at brunch, "I'm sure your mother cooked. Bless her heart." Then she laughed at her own jab. Lydia just nodded. I laughed too, but it burned. That afternoon, Charlotte sent me a photo Mom at a potluck, glowing, holding her lasagna tray. I sat in my car staring at it. Lydia texted asking if I'd serve up tea to her parents' fundraiser. No mention of the brunch, no apology, just entitlement. When Lydia and I argued about the urn, she said, "It's just ashes, Michael. You can remember her without clutter." That word clutter cut deep. I stared at her, trying to find the girl I once adored. She blinked, unbothered. Charlotte later asked if I'd noticed Lydia never mentioned Mom in wedding plans. No tribute, no photo, nothing. I brushed it off. Maybe I didn't want to admit the woman I loved was erasing her. At a wedding planning dinner, Donna handed out seating charts. Patricia's name wasn't there. "Ho," she said, feigning surprise. I thought she passed. Lydia sipped wine, Jack added. "We assumed she'd understand." Understand what? That my mother wasn't welcome? I clenched my jaw, said nothing. Later, Charlotte whispered, "You know what this is?" I nodded, but denial felt safer. I told myself they just forgot. I wondered how much longer could I keep swallowing it. I brought up adding a tribute table for Mom at the wedding. Lydia laughed. "Why turn it into a memorial?" Jack shook his head. Donna muttered a tacky. My throat tightened. I stood at "This matters to me." Lydia's eyes hardened. "It's our day." I looked around the table. No one backed me. Charlotte's silence felt like a scream. That night, I slept on the couch. I kept staring at the mantel, empty and aching. I tried compromising, maybe a photo of Mom on a side table. Lydia snapped. "This obsession is exhausting." Donna added, "You can't guilt us into worshipping her." Worship? That word echoed. Charlotte finally spoke. "She's not asking for worship, just respect." The table went quiet. Jack scoffed. I stared at Lydia, realizing the distance between us wasn't new. It had been growing for months. That night, I knew I'd lost something. Maybe someone, maybe both. I asked Thomas, my father, what Mom would thought. He stared at his coffee, then said, "She would have smiled, made peace, but she'd be hurt." His voice cracked. "You know that." I nodded hollow. He added, "But she'd want you to fight for what's right." That word fight lingered. I hadn't fought. I'd folded. I walked out, called Charlotte and said, "I need to do something." For the first time in weeks, I meant it. I printed photos of Mom, her graduation, her hospital shift, her garden. Charlotte helped. We arranged them in frames. Labeled them Patricia Grant Builder, Mother Fighter. I brought them to the Bennett's estate, placed them on the piano before the bridal shower. Lydia's eyes narrowed. Donna gasped. Jack asked, "What's this?" I answered, "Family." At night, Lydia texted, "You embarrass me." I replied, "You erased her." I knew we'd passed the point of return. Lydia's brother, Ryan, pulled me aside after the photos. "I'm sorry," he said. "They act like no one existed before them." He admitted he missed Grandma's funeral because Donna thought it'd be too sad. His words cracked something. I wasn't alone. I told him about the urn, the blanket, the comments. He nodded slowly. "That's not right." For the first time, someone inside their family saw it too and said it out loud. The next morning, I found the frames in the garage boxed. Face down. No note, just silence. I brought them home. Charlotte cried when she saw them. "You tried," she whispered. That night, I packed a bag. Lydia asked, "So you're leaving over your dead mother?" I replied, "I'm leaving because you never let her live." Her face hardened. I closed the door behind me, feeling something I hadn't in months: clarity. I canceled the wedding. Charlotte helped me send a group email to guests. No dramatic explanation, just facts. Lydia responded within minutes. "You'll regret humiliating me." Jack replied with legal threats about expenses. Donna sent a voice note, crying about wasted centerpiece, but Ryan texted, "Proud of you." The silence from others felt like freedom. I stood in the empty apartment, urn on the mantel, blanket on the couch. My mother's presence had returned. A week later, Lydia posted a smiling selfie. Caption dodged a bullet. Donna commented, "Our strong girl." I stared at it for a moment, then turned off my phone. But within hours, a screenshot of Lydia's post went viral. A former classmate added, "She called her ex dead mom made material." Comments exploded. Strangers defended Patricia, shared stories of single mothers. Lydia deleted her account. Donna tried claiming she'd been hacked. No one believed her. Reporters reached out. I declined interviews. One outlet published an op-ed titled "Erasing Our Mothers," citing Patricia's story. Charlotte cried rating it. Ryan emailed, "They're spiraling and they deserve it." Lydia's law firm distanced themselves. Donna's charity page disappeared overnight. Jack tried contacting Thomas, who never responded. Our silence was louder than any speech. Mom's crocheted blanket became a symbol. Shared across forums, people called it "dignity in stitches." And that's when I truly smiled. Charlotte hosted a small gathering to honor Mom. Friends brought dishes Patricia once made. Ryan came quiet but present. We shared memories, played her favorite songs. Someone brought candles. We lit them under her photo. No speeches, just presence. Lydia sent a cease and desist. We laughed. That night, Charlotte whispered, "She'd be proud." I finally believed it, not because of the backlash but because we reclaimed her story. And this time, no one erased it. Thomas surprised us by speaking. He brought a framed photo of Patricia holding newborn Charlotte. She made this family, he said, and I failed to protect that. He apologized to me, to Charlotte, to Patricia's memory, we cried. For the first time he let his grief speak. Later he asked to keep the blanket for a week. I just want to feel her hands again. It was the most vulnerable I'd ever seen him. One of Lydia's former colleagues DM'd me. She always mocked you, he wrote, said you were obsessed with your dim mom. He attached a video Lydia at a party, drunk, laughing, ashes on the mantle, like a shrine. My hands shook. I didn't feel rage, just finality. I saved it. Didn't share. I didn't need more proof. The world already saw her. What mattered now was who I saw in the mirror. And who I didn't. I returned Mom's blanket to the mantle. Charlotte added a small plaque, Patricia Grant, loved fiercely. We started a scholarship in her name for night school mothers. Ryan donated anonymously. Thomas matched it. Lydia sent a last email. You'll never find someone who'll accept that kind of baggage. I deleted it, then blocked her. Patricia's memory wasn't baggage. It was foundation. I had finally built a life on something real. Not curated, not conditional, real. Weeks later I got a package. No return label. Inside the framed photo I left at Lydia's. Frack but intact. And the blanket clean folded. A sticky note, she deserved better than us. No signature. I sat on the floor holding it, unsure if it was Donna or Ryan. Maybe both, maybe neither. It didn't matter. What mattered was this: even the ones who dismissed her once now knew she deserved reverence. Quiet justice. Charlotte started a blog called Patricia's Mental. It featured stories of under-apria stake mothers, submissions poured in, photos, recipes, memories. One post read, she was never just someone's mom, she was someone. We published it weekly. Ryan shared one about his grandma. Thomas wrote a piece about his wife's laugh. It went viral. Lydia's name never appeared, but her absence echoed louder than her presence ever did. We weren't just grieving anymore, we were honoring. At a community panel on grief, Charlotte and I spoke about Rehearsal. I shared how silence around my mother had hurt more than insults. Afterward, a woman approached me with tears. Thank you, she said. I kept my mom's urn in the closet because my husband called it morbid. Not anymore, she hugged me. That moment felt heavier than Lydia's betrayal. And far more healing. It wasn't about revenge, it was about reclaiming space. One morning, I got a call from Lydia's new fiancé. I need to know, was it all true? His voice shook. I paused, then said, you'll find out on your own. I hung up. An hour later Ryan texted. He's asking questions. Adonna's furious. I didn't reply. It wasn't mine to fix. My fight had never been about ruining Lydia, it was about lifting Patricia. Some battles you win by walking away completely, and without explanation. At our first scholarship ceremony, I read names of the awardees, women balancing work, school, and parenting. One whispered, I almost quit night classes. This saved me. The applause was thunderous. Thomas stood beside me, hand on my shoulder. Charlotte wept quietly. The final slide showed Mom in her nurse uniform. A standing ovation followed. I didn't expect it. I didn't need it. But I let it in for Patricia, for every mother erased. Later that year, I visited Patricia's old hospital. A nurse remembered her instantly. She'd sing while changing ifs. She smiled. I left a photo of Mom in the staff lounge. Builder, mother, fire. The nurse added a flower. 2 weeks later, a wall was dedicated to mothers in medicine. Patricia's photo sat in the center. No donors, no press, just truth. That quiet permanence was louder than any social media storm. She belonged there. One night, I found a voicemail from Donna. We were wrong, she said softly. Patricia was remarkable. I see that now. I didn't call back, but I replayed it twice. Not for her, but for me. That kind of admission, even whispered, meant the story had changed, not just in our family, but in their minds too. You don't always get apologies in person. Sometimes, they arrive late, broken but real, and that's enough. At the year's end, we held a candlelight vigil. Dozens came, holding framed photos. One woman lit a candle and whispered, for the mothers who went unnoticed. Charlotte stood beside me, tears on her cheeks. Ryan nodded across the crowd. A child clutched a crocheted blanket. I exhaled deeply. This wasn't about Patricia alone anymore. It was about legacy, community, remembrance. Her name wasn't just defended, it was remembered. That's all I ever wanted. At the vigil's end, I placed Mom's urn back on the mantle, a fresh flower beside it. No more hiding, no more asking permission, just presence. That night, I wrote in her journal, you were never baggage, you were my beginning. Charlotte read over my shoulder and squeezed my hand. Ryan texted, next year bigger. We weren't just healing, we were building out loud with pride. And with every stitch of her memory restored, I sat on the couch, blanket over my lap, or nearby. The quiet felt full, not hollow. I'd spent so long chasing acceptance from people who didn't deserve to shape her memory. Now, I let go of that need. Charlotte smiled, watching me sketch ideas for next year's scholarship event. She'd love this, she said. I nodded. Not broken, not bitter, just rebuilding thread by thread. Patricia Grant wasn't gone, she was woven in. A photo of Mom sits on my desk now, her laugh caught mid-frame. When days get heavy, I glance at it, not to mourn but to remember who taught me strength. Lydia's voice, once so loud, faded into nothing. What remains is clarity. Respect isn't optional. Legacy isn't decorative. I've made peace with the past, not by forgiving, but by honoring. Mom's story outlived the silence, and mine began the day I chose truth. I kept the voicemail from Donna, not to gloat but as a reminder. People can change, even if it's too late, and sometimes, they don't, that's okay. My peace didn't come from apology. It came from action, from saying her name without flinching, from reclaiming space for the ones who built us. For every moment she was dismissed, I planted a louder truth. Patricia Grant mattered, and through us, through me, she still does. Lydia moved on quickly, but her reputation didn't. Her silence at the scholarship's success spoke volumes. Donna withdrew from public events. Jack sold their summer home. None of it felt like revenge, just consequence. We didn't shout their names anymore. We didn't have to. They chose Rehearsal. We chose remembrance, and remembrance always outlives noise. Always. We renovated Mom's garden. Charlotte painted a mural on the fence, sunflowers, her favorite. Thomas planted new roses. Ryan brought compost. Neighbors joined, no speeches, just hands in dirt. Laughter memories, we called it Patricia's Patch. Kids played there now. Life returned to a space once silenced. It wasn't grand, it was sacred. That garden didn't need applause, it had legacy. On the anniversary of her passing, we gathered quietly, no posts, no press, just family. I read from her journal. Charlotte made lasagna. Thomas lit a candle. We sat around the table, eyes full, hearts steady. I looked at them and said, "Thank you for remembering her with me." No one answered. They didn't need to in that silence. She was there, fully, finally home. Thanks for watching. Hit subscribe to check out more stories on my channel.